Hi everyone, my name is Caris and welcome back to my corner of the internet where I talk about books and other things that I enjoy. In today's video I'm going to be talking about books that you might find comforting if you're feeling lonely. I really wanted to film this video and put it up at the start of the year because I feel like while New Year is a time where we can all look forward and think about all the great things that we're hopefully going to do in the year, it's also a time that can be really difficult, and I think especially this year with everything that's going on in the world still and here in the UK with us just entering our third lockdown. Combine that with the end of the festive period for those people who celebrated that or who were able to celebrate that this year, and it can be quite a difficult time for a lot of people. I feel like loneliness, especially when it comes to loneliness experienced by younger people, is a topic that isn't talked about enough, and I would love to do a full-length video on this, just talking about it and talking about the different types of loneliness that you can experience and maybe the reasons why young people in particular might feel lonely. I would really like to do that, and I feel like I'm in a place now where I can do that. So if you would like to see that, then let me know. I feel like I'm going to touch on the topic now briefly, but I don't want to go into like too much detail. I feel like it's a video that I would need to properly script and really think through to do it justice and to do it properly. I think there's a tendency to associate loneliness with quite often the elderly, and it's completely right that that association is there because there is that, and that is very, very important, a very important topic in itself, and it's completely valid. But I think that there's also this whole other side to loneliness that people maybe don't automatically think about or talk about straight away. I'm really conscious of oversimplifying or overgeneralizing this topic, which is why I think it would be best to do a full video on this. But just speaking from my own experiences now, I would say that 2019 in particular, and going back to possibly 2018 as well, but for a good year of my life, I would say that I felt lonely a significant amount of the time. I certainly felt like at the time that was the only thing that I was ever feeling. Other mental health factors did play into that, but I just felt so incredibly alone all the time. It didn't matter if I was going out with friends, it didn't matter if I was going into work and speaking to people and having a good day. None of that mattered. I would come home at the end of the day and I would just sit on my bed and think, you were so alone. And the pinnacle of feeling like that for me was New Year's Eve 2019 going into 2020. I just felt this like immense pressure to be doing something with someone, and I didn't have anything to do. I didn't have anywhere to go. All of my friends were either doing stuff with other people, with their families, whatever. My own family were going out with their friends who I didn't really want to go out with, and I literally just sat in my bed and cried myself into 2020. The reason why I feel like I can talk about this now is because for some reason something has clicked within me in 2020 and I feel so much better, and I don't feel like that anymore, and I really don't know why. Because going into the first lockdown I was so anxious, I felt so sick about it because I was just so sure that it was going to be worse than ever. But for some reason, and I don't know how, it got easier, the feeling. And I don't know if that's because with everyone being locked down, the element of FOMO has been taken away, which I think for me definitely plays into it. I don't know. As I said, it's a big discussion for another video, but I just wanted to like put my personal experiences with feeling like this in here at the beginning of the video, because I just think that loneliness can be physical isolation, but it can also be being physically surrounded by people and still feeling like it, and both experiences are equally valid and equally important. So that being said, I'm gonna get into the recommendations of things that I have found comforting when I've been feeling lonely. I feel like for me personally, when I'm feeling like this, things that I really look for in the media that I'm consuming are really strong, larger than life characters, often really good friendship groups, also wholesome stories, and also sometimes characters who overcome certain boundaries, possibly characters that feel like they don't fit in or aren't accepted, and then overcome that through the story and you go along on that journey with them. For me, these are the sort of stories that help. So I hope that they will help some of you as well. And just finally, before I get into the things that I'm going to be talking about, if you are struggling, I just want you to know that you're not alone. I'm going to leave some links to organisations in the description so you can reach out to those places and contact them. If you just want a chat My DMs are open and the link to my Twitter is in the description as well. So I am mainly going to be talking about books in this video, but there are a couple of bonus TV shows and films that I'm going to throw in at the end, just because I know that when I've been feeling really lonely in the past and just feeling so overwhelmed with that feeling, reading has been the last thing that I've wanted to do. I find it so difficult to concentrate on things sometimes when I'm not doing great mentally, so then I would turn to TV shows and films. But to begin with, I'm going to talk about the books, and the first thing that I wanted to recommend is the Murder Most Unladylike series by Robin Stevens. This is a middle grade mystery series, and actually looking through the books that I've picked out, most of them are children's books, and I feel like there's something very comforting that I find in children's books that I turn to. The thing that I really love about this series, and the thing that I think makes it really good to turn to, is the fact that friendship is such a central part of these stories, and it's not always just the positive great things about friendship that is explored. The further you get on in the series, the more you see the characters having disagreements, arguments, but ultimately they always overcome that, and I just think there's something really wholesome and lovely about that. Another thing that I really like about this series is that it's written from Hazel's perspective, and Hazel is originally from Hong Kong and she was sent to the school in England by her father. She talks a lot about how she feels like she doesn't fit in and how she'll never be British enough, especially during the time she was one of very few people of colour in the school that she attends, and you can quite often see other characters treating her differently because of her race. Obviously I personally haven't had to go through anything like that, but I have seen people saying that that was an element of the story that they could relate to and found quite comforting. And the other thing that I really like about these books is just the detective society element of it. You really feel like when you're reading that you're part of this, that you're working out the mystery along with the two main characters, and I just think that's so fun. These books are so quick. I got through each of them in a day or two. Even though the subject matter is murder, they're actually really fun. The next book or series that I've got here is the Heartstopper graphic novel series by Alice Oseman. The first 3 graphic novels are out in paperback. The fourth, or at least some of it, is currently being updated on Alice's blog and will be out in 2021, and there's going to be one final installment after that, making 5 in total. This graphic novel series follows the relationship of 2 boys called Nick and Charlie, both of whom originally appeared in Alice's debut novel Solitaire. I included this on the list because it's just so cute, it's so heartwarming, the relationship is just so lovely, and the characters in this are also really diverse, which is great to see. I read this whole series right at the start of the first lockdown and it really boosted my mood, put a smile on my face, so hopefully it will do the same for someone else. Again, this is really quick because it's a graphic novel. If you're someone like me whose attention span just goes out the window when they're feeling rubbish, then this might be a good one to check out. Next I have Pages & Co by Anna James. The first book is called Tilly and the Book Wanderers. I haven't actually read the rest of the series, but I really want to. I personally just find something so wholesome in books that deal with books as subject matter, so I found this so lovely and so enjoyable to read. And when I read it, I really found myself thinking about this almost magical power that books have to make us feel less alone. Other elements of this story, other than the obvious bookish element that I really enjoyed, were Tilly's friendship with Oscar and also her discovery to understanding what really happened to her mum. As I sort of said at the beginning, I often find a lot of comfort in books where characters have to overcome something. On a similar theme of finding comfort in books that are about books, I had to mention Matilda by Roald Dahl. I think Matilda's sort of the ultimate story about having the courage to be yourself and almost having that belief in yourself that you are who you are and that's okay and that's good enough. There's also the lovely found family element to this story, and as I said, the whole premise being about books and having books as such a key feature. As we're on a bit of a roll with the children's books, I also wanted to quickly mention A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett, which is just such a heartwarming, lovely story. I think there's a real resilience about Sarah and also some of the other characters that feature in this as well, and that's why I think this makes a really good one to read if you're feeling lonely. As I said, for me personally, when I'm feeling like that, I really like stories of characters who are resilient, who overcome these big things that happen to them and being treated differently and not fitting in. Sarah in this book is definitely made to feel like a real outsider, and she manages to overcome that and just have this inner strength. I know I'm going to talk about films at the end, but I would definitely recommend this film. It's one of my favourite films ever. Both the book and the film are quite sad. They've both made me cry in different ways. The endings are different. I know that might seem counterproductive when you're feeling lonely to just make yourself feel even more sad, but sometimes it can be a bit of a distraction if it's caused by something like fiction, and it can be a bit like cathartic for me anyway. Another book with a film that I would recommend is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. All the different relationships that you see between the different girls and their mom and the people that they meet I just found so charming, and it's made this list for that portrayal of sisterhood in particular. Again, I would recommend the film, the one that came out last year. I loved it so much. I just think it's such a beautifully shot film, and I would watch it just for the aesthetics really. Next, I wanted to quickly mention my favourite book of all time, The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. Another one which features books as a key plot point. I wonder if you can tell what sort of stories I feel comforted by yet. But aside from the books, this is another classic example of a young girl who doesn't fit in or isn't made to feel like she fits in, and then manages to find solace and comfort in something. That something in this case being books, ultimately finding friends as well and real genuine lovely relationships. This is another one that is quite sad, especially towards the end, but if you're okay with that, then I would just highly recommend this. And the final book that I wanted to mention is Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. This is one that came out last year and I really loved it. This follows a trans boy called Yadriel who comes from a family of Brujex, and all that he wants is for his family to accept him as a brujo, which is a traditionally male role. And because he's trans, his family isn't accepting of this. Again, this is a story of finding acceptance, being true to yourself, accepting who you are, and there's also these really cute, wholesome, heartwarming elements of love, romance, also family, just everything. I would highly recommend that you read this one. So those were all of the books that I had on my list. I'm going to move on quickly to the TV shows and films. I don't really have that many, but I just wanted to include them quickly. So the first TV show that I just love and has been such a tonic to me is Derry Girls. Derry Girls is set in Derry, as the title would suggest. It's set in the 90s and it follows a group of 5 friends. There's 4 girls who go to this Catholic school and a boy who is English, who is the cousin of one of the girls, and they're just 30-minute episodes following them and their families throughout various things that they get up to. I just love it so much. It's one of those shows that you can just put on. You don't have to think about it too much. The characters are fantastic, it's funny, and yet it also navigates some quite important topics. I'm due a rewatch. I can't wait for the 3rd season. If you've seen it, please let me know your favourite character and let me know which character you're most like. My favourite character is Michelle. I would love to be a Michelle. I think I'm an Erin crossed with a Claire. I definitely think I was more like Erin when I was at school. As bad as this is going to make me sound, the sense of like, I'm so academic, I'm so like, oh, I'm so great, like that in an academic sense was me when I was younger. I was quite big-headed internally, but there's also a lot of myself that I see in Claire. I don't think I'm a Michelle at all, but she is my favourite. If you've seen Derry Girls and you like it, there's also the companion book that's out now. I haven't read this yet, but I imagine that this would be very comforting as well. The other TV show that I wanted to mention quickly is The Great British Bake Off. I believe in America it's called The Great British Baking Show. There's not really that much that needs to be said about it. It's essentially just a competition for bakers, but it is just so pure and so wholesome. The highlight of my year every year. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It will just brighten your day. I've actually only got one final film to talk about because I have already mentioned Little Women and A Little Princess, and that film is Klaus. Now this film is a Christmas film in the sense that it is a bit of an origin story for Father Christmas, but I wouldn't say that it's Christmassy to the extent that you couldn't watch it at another point of year and still enjoy it. I just think it's the most heartwarming thing that I've ever seen. I watched this shortly before Christmas because I just wanted a Christmas film that was quite short to watch before going to bed one night, and I wasn't expecting that much of it, but oh my gosh, it was just so pure. It basically follows the story of a postman who is like rubbish at his job basically, and he gets sent out to this island. There's been no successful post service there ever, and there's two very divided communities on the island who hate each other, and it's just a story of all these different communities coming together and how the postman, who is a complete outsider, plays a role in all of that. I don't want to go into the plot because I think it's one that you just have to watch. It's an animation. I think the animation was really well done. Not that I'm a film guru, but I liked it. So those were all of the things that I wanted to talk to you about today. I hope that you found this video useful and you liked it. It's a little bit different. I haven't done a recommendations video since coming back to YouTube because quite frankly I don't feel like I've read enough books recently, but I feel like I found quite a few that seem to fit well around this topic. If you've read any of these books, please let me know in the comments what you thought of them, or leave a recommendation for your ultimate comfort read that might help someone else out, or just leave an emoji, whatever you would prefer. Other than that though, that is it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're all keeping safe and staying well, and I will see you again next time. Bye!